Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Standing Committee on Strategies and Public Policies meeting. We have a few presentations on the agenda. The first one from the New Brunswick Medical Education Foundation, Mr. Darren McLeod, is here to represent them. Darren, welcome back.
So we'll invite you to the microphone.
I'm Darren McLeod. I'm the Executive Director of the New Brunswick Medical Education Foundation. I also have here Carol Chapman, who's on our board. Many people probably know Carol, and Carol's also chair of our Foundation Advancement Committee, which is ultimately the committee that raises money for what we do. So we had met with the mayor in August, very briefly, but it was a great contact point. A lot of people don't really know a lot about us. As I learned when I took on the job almost 2 years ago, we've been in existence for 11 years. Our foundation is entirely dedicated to creating scholarships for New Brunswickers in and out of province, with the provision that they do typically up to a 4-year return to service agreement in the province to receive a scholarship of an equal amount of time. And I'm going to go through a quick presentation for you just to give you a sense of what we are, what we do, and a bit of back history, and also where we have left an impact in Dieppe and where we could probably do a better impact in Dieppe. So that is actually, I think it's in L'Acadie and certainly in the Brunswick News, we put an advertisement on the weekend. Our scholarship ceremony is going to be September 29th at 7 o'clock. I think the mayor received an invitation on it, but I can happily add council onto it if you'd like to watch it. It's online again. We are living in that fun thing called semi-post-COVID, but putting 250 people in a room doesn't seem very comfortable yet. So also, typically, all of our students are in university now. We would have traditionally done a scholarship ceremony in July. Any of our students that go to Memorial are gone in August, but given that it's COVID and we've got people and families all over the province, we've again decided to pivot to online. So that is a snapshot of our 55 students who received 56 scholarships. Last year it was 42, so we continue to increase each year. As you kind of read through the top here, you can sort of see, based on what we've talked about, we were developed in 2008, 2009 by Dr. Donald Craig. He's very much alive and with us. He's still a special advisor to us. And the reason he set up this foundation was he felt that there was a missing point in the healthcare story in New Brunswick, and that was to convince and engage New Brunswickers who are studying medicine or have been accepted in medical school to come home or stay home and practice. We have a lot of students who are in other parts of the country because they've been accepted into med school, they did their undergraduate somewhere else, but they do have to apply to us and they have to reapply each year. So they do come home and they do practice with us. We're the only private not-for-profit in Canada dedicated to this. And the reason being is you just have to look for the numbers. They speak for themselves. We know as of last year, the waiting list was over 45,000 for a family practitioner. I've certainly talked to those in Department of Health, and we all kind of, from what I'm hearing on the real number intel, it's over 70,000. Probably about 25,000 people have just stopped looking. And they're unfortunately getting healthcare through the most expensive and the most invariably not the best way to receive healthcare, which is through emergency departments and walk-in clinics. So really, it was for us to create the opportunity to, what do we do about our best and brightest in the province, or even if they're outside of New Brunswick and they want to come home, is to create a scholarship. So we, if you look at our numbers, sorry, I'm looking up here because I can't read the screen down here. We've, since 2010, we've given out over $6 million in bursary support, and we've directly raised over 6 million. We're actually now 8 million invested, and we've given over $2,530,000 in scholarships. So we are leaving an impact in the province. As of this last past scholarship recipient deadline, which was May 31st, we have supported 168 students through 348 bursaries. So that's 280 years of service, if you want to break it down by numbers. We have really an incredible 154 scholarship recipients who have pledged a return to service. And knowing two former health ministers who will remain unnamed in different governments who I've met over time, our return on investment in terms of supporting students bar none far better than what the government's done. And there's nothing against what the government's done. It's a challenge. It's not always easy to get people to come home or stay home. And they've spent millions, and all with good reason, but their average is 3 years, and 18 months is the norm. So they tend to go on to greener pastures. So beyond that, this year, we had a bit of a record. We were giving up 56 scholarships, so $382,000, which I think is exceptional given it's a COVID environment, but we're very grateful some donors stepped up to the plate just before the deadline and helped us kind of move it. We have 22 practicing doctors right now. And as you can see, they're in St. John, Fredericton, Moncton, Hampton, Rossay, Quispamsis, Bathurst, and Edmundston. 13 of those are in family medicine, and we have 14 scholarship students that have already indicated that they are going to be beginning medicine residency programs soon. So we do have some future family doctors. We also really encourage our students to go into specialties. 25% of the physician workforce is past 55, so we've got a major retirement curve. And in specialties, it's even more pronounced. And family medicine, it's just the evidence in family medicine for us and what we know about our students is every time a senior physician retires, you're taking out 4,000 or 5,000 patients, and it's going to take 2 to 3 of our scholarship recipients to replace every senior doctor, because new physicians are averaging 1,500 to 1,800 patients top, but they also wear multiple hats in the healthcare system. They're not just a family practitioner, they're doing long-term care, some are hospitalists. We've had others that have ended up picking other pieces in the healthcare system that's equally important. And that's just a bit of a number of how many scholarships we've been giving. So from 2010, we started off with 3 and $25,000 to this year, 56 scholarships and 382,000. So we've grown incrementally. Honestly, my goal would be to get us to 76 or more. 76 is how many seats there are in the province. That's between University of Moncton, University de Montréal, Laval, Delmed NB, and Memorial. But the reality is we could easily exceed that number in scholarships in this province because the attrition rate for bringing in students versus the retirement curve, we'll never be able to meet the full demand, and we're a partner, as far as I'm concerned, with the Department of Health and the Medical Society and the college in trying to alleviate the healthcare, frankly, looming crisis, if not a crisis, in the province. That's just sort of a snapshot right now, as you can see, just sort of where our students and breakdown is right across the province, going right into 2021. And that's just an increment of how our scholarship numbers have grown in terms of dollars that we have netted out to provide support. And that's physicians by region. So you can see Bathurst, Evanston, Fredericton, Moncton. Now, St. John is a little high because the foundation was originally created in the greater St. John area with all good intentions, really, by a group of very interested physicians almost 11 years ago. So it was basically incubated there, but we are a provincial foundation by mandate, and that's a big part of my job, is to get around the province and talk about what we do and why we need your support. And then there's some of the numbers. We know we've got one of the oldest populations in the country. We are, the 45,000 waiting for a family physician. We have extraordinarily long wait times in this province, and COVID has only made that worse. 25% of our workforce that are physicians are over 55. Really, our story is about bringing physicians home, and that every medical student in this province, because of high tuition costs, really needs an opportunity to get some support to stay here. And I'm not, I hate to say, we're not trying to incentivize or monetize healthcare, but rather everybody has to do it to get people to stay in the province. And there's an interesting split. I mean, if you're a Delmed student, it's $24,500 a year. But even if you're a UDM student, I've had several conversations to try and help UDM grow more scholarships. It may only be $5,000 a year, because that's the cost for any one of the 3 med schools. But having spoken to the head of philanthropy too, a lot of students that are going into that university and into med school come from really working class families. So $5,000 is a lot of money, and $5,000 is a game changer for a lot of these students. It's what keeps them here. And again, for our case, we're unique as a foundation. We are working with our partners to secure the future of healthcare, certainly here in Dieppe, right across the province. It's really about bringing our students home. And then we had a couple of numbers there for you, just a sort of a Van Bro, who got a Province of New-Brunswick scholarship. She's in her 4th year through University Sherbrooke. And then Alex Lamontagne, who got a Scotiabank one. It's just really a bit of a snapshot of who we are. And then if you go back here, I can give you sort of our scholarship numbers for Dieppe is right up there. So we had, it was two, if I'm going back, starting about 2014, we had 1, 2, 3 was the highest in 2017. We had 1 in 2018, 1 in 2019, 1 in 2020, and 2 in 2021. But we'd certainly like to change that number and do a lot more. And I just recently had a meeting before I came here today with somebody in the manufacturing sector talking about what we do as scholarships. And the best way I can break down how we work is we either do flow-throughs, which are multi-year gifts. So that could be community grants set up. We've had partnerships. The other area I'm working really actively on is endowments, and I see that usually as a partnership situation. So to create a $5,000 scholarship in perpetuity, so I would look at UDAM as a model, that would be $125,000. Now, it seems like a big amount, but if you break that out over X amount of years, or you do it in sectoral partnerships, and that's areas we're looking at, it's one of the areas we're trying to do. I think flow-throughs through community grants, which are your 5 and 10,000 for whether it's cities or it's foundations or chambers, which I've worked with all of them, are great, but we're really also trying to focus on how we can build sustainability in the system that is meaningful and long-term. So I'm not back here every 4 years asking for money. Thank you.
Question de la part des membres du conseil.
Question from the municipal councillors. Mr. Lantagne.
Hi, I guess my question is, since this is for New Brunswickers, and as per I read in the, like for Alexis and Jeremy, they're saying that they're looking to practice in New Brunswick, so it's not a requirement to come back in New
It
Brunswick?
is. Actually, there is a return to service agreement. So we only have
Is it
maybe...
X amount of years?
Yeah,
Or?
for each year you get a scholarship with us, you have to pledge a return to service.
Okay.
So out of that 163 students we have now, we've only lost, what have we lost? 6 students in 11 years, and 4 have repaid their loans. And I'm just putting 2 on repayment because they understand when they leave, and they leave marriage, career, things happen. So I totally have to respect that those things happen in real life, but they've all been very good about it in terms of doing repayment. We amortize it over 5 or 6 years, recognizing the cost. I mean, I spoke to Dr. Chris Gallant at Moncton Hospital, who runs the family medicine education unit there. And I mean, if you're coming out even Del Med doing family medicine, you're $250,000 in debt by year 7 when you're going to family practice. So if there's anything we can do as a foundation to help sort of alleviate the actual educational costs. And in terms of return to service, it's mandated. Also, each year our students have to reapply. They don't get a grant for a straight 4 years. They have to show intent in their letter, why they want to practice or what's their wish to either come home or stay home. We rank them on certainly they're in med school, what was their post-secondary marks, and equally important, what do they do in terms of volunteerism? That's, I think, a significant way. What do they do about giving back to the community? And of course, they're all stellar, and they make me feel ashamed at my age, but most of them are doing it like 22 and 23. You know, and I look at what we gave out. We gave out 56 scholarships this year, but we had 112 applicants. So we've turned down 56. It's a numbers reality. Last year it was 42 scholarships, but we had 109 applicants. And our Francophone applicants have tripled in the last 3 years. Because again, I've made a really concerted effort working with UDM and other universities that are medical schools across the country where we know there's New Brunswickers. And I've had a very good conversation, a couple now with Vitalite. I mean, they have an extraordinary retention rate at about 91% because you can't write your Canadian boards in Quebec and you can't practice there, but students still go away. So to me, if it's something as simple as a scholarship that will help convince a young bright person to become somebody's next family physician here or the next specialist, I think it's a win for anything we can do to keep them and kind of help abate a bit of the healthcare crisis that we seem to face my 15 years that I've lived here. And then in terms of what you do, absolutely, we make that very clear, and that's actually clear and upfront on the website when they apply, that you have to reapply and that you have to do a return to service.
Okay, thank you.
Merci, Madame Leboutier.
Mrs. Leboutier.
I have a few questions.
Yeah.
And most of them, it's more for information purposes. So is there any cities who already?
Yeah, right now, Rosse has continually done one. Hampton did one for 5 years. I've been asked to submit to the city of Bathurst and the city of Fredericton. We just, actually, Carol and I, not that long ago, just met with the mayor of Moncton. So I'm just waiting to hear from the mayor if they want me to go grant or if they want to go economic development, because I think she's sort of looking at the bigger picture of what we do as a foundation. And then I'm actually in the process of going to the town of Quispamsis. So we have one municipality now. I suspect we'll probably see 3 or 4 more this year as they've sort of asked me to start applying. And they're pivoting between, is it going to be a grants, sort of a 4-year commitment, or are we looking at something bigger? So then we're talking economic development and some partnerships as well.
Okay. My other question is, in some rural area, when you study medicine, and that, again, is more for information, it was in the past, I'm not sure what's the status now, is that if you, like, let's say a small area or Bathurst, okay, just Bathurst by example.
Oof, the Mayor Bathurst won't be happy to hear they're small.
No, but I
Pick
was
another
thinking
one.
about Caracat, but I always use that example. So I'm going to shift. Okay, that's the real. Anyway, so if the student after the first year commit to that hospital, to my knowledge, isn't it paid at 100% their school year per year that they're going to commit? So,
If they commit, and that's typically year 5 or 6 in residency. So what happens on the residency side is most students by year 4 have an inkling of which way they want to go. But if they go into the hospital, you get paid for residency. So residency is year 5 and 6, which would be $60,000 to $75,000 a year. It's not a staggering amount of money for the hours they put in. And then they either have signed an agreement to go into a family practice, or they end up going back. They could be going to UDM, they could be going to Dalhousie to do a specialty. So what we do is we do the first 4 years of the MD program. And in the case of Dieppe, like with any donor I've worked with, you would define it. To me, it would be within the city borders of Dieppe. And we have last year, we gave obviously scholarships in this year, but last year we turned down 5 applications from Dieppe, and this year we turned down 7. So it's capacity in terms of just how much money is available and which scholarships.
okay, thank you.
Merci. Quelqu'un d'autre? Monsieur Lantin?
Anyone else, Monsieur Lantin?
If I have a couple of questions, I guess. So if the city decides to support, is it possible to say we want our scholarship to go to first from someone from Dieppe? Or
Absolutely.
we can do that. And my second question, I guess, is what are you expecting, or what would be your wish for a city of our size? Where would you see us in all those categories? I know there's different categories: visionary, foundation.
And that's basically donors who have set up depending where they are.
Yeah.
I would love to start working with, and that's my goal, is to work with municipalities, and it might be with other partners. There's a business sector here, there's a lot of other players, there's foundations, there's the sisters. There's several entities that I think could get involved with the city. My goal is, I think the flow through the 4 and 5 year scholarships are great. They serve an important service, but I'm a real fan of the endowments because they're in perpetuity. And when you say, I recognize your size or any size, that $125,000 is not a small amount of money to digest quickly. But I think what I would do is, when I'm looking at a city like this or any entity, is to look at it with partners as well. To me, the city would have a vested interest probably from an economic point of view of having others step up, foundations or corporate, and certainly that all exists in the community. You're the fastest growing community in the province. And again, I leave that also to the city. It's ultimately your decision. If it's a case that you just feel, like a flow through, which we'd be truly grateful for anyways, is the route to go, then we would certainly work with that. If it's something more along the endowment, then I'm happy to have the longer conversation and happy to meet with other strategic partners that would seriously consider that and help the city by financially supporting it as well. Because I never really believe, unless you've got capacity, that, you know, $125,000 is not a small investment. And certainly it's something we can also do that we have in the past. We've broken it out over a couple of years, if that's easier for a couple of groups to get involved. Some do it at once. It's entirely up to them. I just work within the parameters of it, but I'm happy to work on partnerships as well, because I see that as the next sort of stage and level for us as a foundation to build long-term sustainability.
And lastly, just
Yeah.
one more quick question. So let's just give a number. Let's say the city commit for 100,000.
He'll also take your money, not just the city money. Just thought you should
Of
know that.
course, it comes from the taxpayers, right? So I might have missed it. If so, I apologize. But for how many years would that be?
If you did, well, okay, I mean, if it was $125,000 as an endowment, that's in perpetuity. That will always produce $5,000 income for one scholarship forever. So that would be City of Dieppe, say U to M, as to me a natural fit. It's the medical school in the community. If it was, we gave you $100,000 and you wanted to do that as just scholarships without it being an endowment, then you could end up doing anything from $2,000, $5,000, $3,000, $5,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year for X amount of years. You could do it for 4 years, 8 years, 10 years, and then we would just sort of break it down based on the commitment. And then the endowment, and that will give you more scholarships, most certainly. The difference between that and the endowment is the endowment will be just, it's in perpetuity, and it would produce one, but it would be there forever.
Okay, so it can be sort of customized.
Absolutely, and we do have lots of what we call flow throughs. So they've put up $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, and they've said, we would like to do this over X amount of years, and this is how many scholarships we want, and here's our parameters. And my job as the executive director is to work within those parameters set up by, whether it's a municipality, an individual, a family, or a foundation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci, Madame Godbout.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Just a quick question. I thought I saw it when I read through, but I can't seem to locate it again. Your selection committee process in terms of, and what does that involve, and how do you process applications from Francophone students? I noticed that being in St. John initiated there's a strong Anglophone.
Yeah, so we have a grants committee who each year spends probably 2 to 3 weeks going through all the applications. We always try to have at least a Francophone or somebody fluently bilingual. So our chair this year was Nora Kelly. Nora's on our board. Nora was a former Minister of Health, retired in 2008. So Nora certainly is Montrealer and has some capacity. We're actually, my job, and certainly that with Carol and others, is we're trying to build on a more diverse board. That's just, I think, because of the history. And really, until I came on in 2019, it'd always been a half-time foundation with a half-time executive director. So I came on, and my role is to get across the province and also build a stronger Francophone profile on committees and the board. But how we rank it is, it's based on the student's academic ability, their intent, and really it boils down to things like, what are they doing in the community and what's their intention to practice in the province. So we've grown exponentially. Last year, the year before I came on in 2019, we only had 7 Francophone applications. We just weren't known. So I worked aggressively with U to M and their partners to get our name out across the country to Francophone applicants. And last year we had 17. This year we had over 30 applicants. So we're growing exponentially. I'd like to weight it to the demographics of the province at some point, and frankly, 50-50 I'd be fine with. My attitude is anybody that stays in the province is a win for us. And I'll say this, because I had a really good conversation with Vitalite, and we've been back and forth, is the real win with UDM students is you've got students that are fluently bilingual coming into the healthcare system. Like they're the perfect students. And because, well, they get their training through here, or if they do a specialty, they go to Quebec for 3 years, they can't work in the province. So they have to come home and practice. So it's a kind of a perfect situation in many ways, that the way they've set up the med school.
C'est bien. Quelqu'un d'autre? Monsieur Brideau.
Merci, M. le Maire. I'd like to know the province. I heard that many times in the past, whereby the province limit the number of license to family doctor or family doctor. Is that still exists, or are
The regional health authorities now have the power basically over how they grant out the openings for, excuse me, for new family physicians. Billing numbers were sunset just actually after I started the role. So we've had that conversation, and certainly now they have to go through the regional health authority. So they have to obviously get accredited at a hospital, then they go through the regional health authority to find a vacancy. In most cases, they're setting up new practices, or they're partnering in many cases with existing practices or taking over. Though more and more so I'm learning from the society is the preference is either they set up or they partner on a new practice. So out of all of our physicians who have become family physicians, say they've all managed to secure a spot. And if it had a geographic requirement, they've ended up practicing in the area that was defined by the scholarship. I can guarantee you the business community would do cartwheels if they knew we have one of our students going in their area and there was a barrier from the regional health authority. Because I mean, they all face the same problems, and that's the other story we always say. And I do when I go on the road or just talk about who we are. We have to look after our own. We've had a net influx of people for the first time in my 15 years in this province. Over the last 2 years, with over 4,000 the province has grown in the last 2 years, and I don't think that's going to abate anytime soon. You just have to look at real estate prices and understand that we are kind of the net beneficiary through COVID. And then these people are going to stay, but they're not going to stay past 5 years if they can't get a family physician. And the number one barrier I hear from anybody in the business community, talking to the council right across the board, is access to healthcare. It's the number one game changer for business leadership internationally to decide if they're going to set up in our province or not.
Thank you.
Quelqu'un d'autre?
Anyone else?
Je ne vois pas d'autres
I
intervenants.
see no one else.
For your presentation, it was, I think, very insightful. I think that's the right word. Obviously, it drew a lot of attention. I don't remember getting this many members of council asking questions. I always thought they were a shy group, but I guess you hit a nerve, hopefully a positive nerve, and obviously it will be taken into consideration by staff, and we anticipate getting a recommendation from staff, which will obviously be influenced by some of the things they've heard in the past half hour, 25 minutes. So again, I thank you for your presentation, and we'll,
Thank you.
what's the old saying? I'll get back to you, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if you have any questions
Thank you for your presence,
after that,
yeah.
let me know, and I can send more details as well.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present.
Okay, merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Bonne fin de soirée.
Thank you. Good evening.
Ça nous amène au
Fine.
prochain item. Il est dû à 6 heures.
6 o'clock.
Okay.
Maria.
So we're gonna talk about the excitement of pickleball.
Maintenant, on va parler du pickleball.
Thank you all, and it's interesting to watch how much more is really happening with these scholarships, and a lot of these young people are going to the smallest parts of this
Yeah.
province. So it's exciting if we can keep things moving at the speed that we have, and businesses are very keen to talk to us. So I think Darren's point about teaming together with the private sector,
Yeah, that's a good
municipalities
point.
is a perfect way to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah. So thank you. Take care.
thank you. See you. OK, alors, deuxième item pour la soirée,
The next
pickleball.
item is pickleball presentation from Claudette Leblanc. Hello, Claudette. Before you start, I want to thank you for all the time that you've contributed to the municipality on this, on the revision committee. Can you get closer to the mic, please? I wanted to present my colleague, Ron Melasso. He's one of the pioneers of pickleball in Dieppe. He won many championships and tournaments and even a national tournament. So I brought him along with me. With the report of the pickleball court in the centenary, we have a director's plan that for 10 years for the municipality. Who are we? Pickleball Dieppe exists for about 10 years now. We have more than 150 members. And what's interesting, it's a game, but the members are 50% male and female, so it's not just for one sex. And you can play mixed teams, men and women. This presentation is to show the needs and advantage of quality installations in Dieppe. The increasing popularity since these past years, and with COVID, we thought we would continue to play outside rather than inside. We were behind Bâtiment School on their tennis courts. So everybody was registered, and we compiled these figures 2 weeks ago. We thought in 2020 we had 580 participants. In 2019 we had 713, and last week we had 859, and we play 3 or 4 times a week in the evenings behind Municipal. Right now we're trying to go at 5 or 5:30 because at 7 it's starting to get dark, and sometimes it's dark we're still playing. So what is pickleball? It's a sport with a palette, a racket, and it's between tennis and ping pong and badminton. You play inside or outside with on court, and it's 36 inches tall, the net. We have double teams, 2 people. It's dexterity like tennis and badminton. So we talk about table tennis as well. I worked with a guy this weekend and he really liked it. He had a lot of experience in that. It's a contagious sport. You can see the people are increasing. We can't even have any publicity because we're full. It's contagious. So here we have pictures of publicity that we see in newspapers. There's passion that we can share with friends and family. And we have no fights there either. Yeah, right. We would like a quality facilities with 10 courts, 6 courts in the space of 3 tennis courts. So we could have 6 for pickleball, and we want some greenery and a chalet, a pavilion. So we figured we could have at least 10 courts for pickleball, and there'd still be some space left over. We could have a clubhouse, pavilion. We could share with the tennis just beside it. It would create a sports complex of rackets like a tennis and pickleball because we work in collaboration with both clubs. So if tennis has a tournament and wants to use our space to warm up, vice versa, then we could do the same thing for tournaments. All these courts would be in the same area. And the capacity of the members, all ages, would be increasing. We could have initiation sections, and we could give lessons. We can't do that right now. And we could invite youth as well. And some schools now are starting in grade 6 and 7 to play with these rackets. So they're working with the Department of Education for this curriculum in the schools. Advantages that we see is that it would be the only complex like this in the Atlantic provinces with 10 courts. We could have important competitions and we could have economic flow throughs of $20,000. In Ontario wanted to come to Dieppe for a tournament, but with our pandemic, we told them to stay home. So we have examples of courts elsewhere in the province at Shediac. There's 4, Riverview has 2, Saint-Isidore has 6, and Bathurst has 8. These are a few pictures that shows these different courts. We don't have any permanent court, so our nets, like here, they're permanent. Groups can get together. We have portable nets, so the one of the executive members has to be there to install and remove the net. Some people want to stay after 7:30, but once the volunteer's been there for 2-3 hours, we just end up going home. We don't want to stay any later. Pickleball Dieppe is ready to work and collaborate with the city of Dieppe. We have expertise for construction, and we would like this sport to be for people of all ages and physical conditions. We want a unique complex in the Atlantic, and we want courts for the sport. So this is what pickleball is. Do you have any questions? Yes. There's one question from Mr. Brito. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Claudette, to have taken the time to come and present to us tonight. It's been 3 years or 4 years already that we've had discussions with Claudette and Danny, and I saw the enthusiasm and all the work they've done in that project. There's no doubt that this court will be a place where we can have this recognized sport in Dieppe. And I went to the East Saint Isidore. I wanted to see what it looked like. Danny and Claudette invited me to try it. Our former councillor Ten Godet, he really liked it as well. Keep going with this excellent project, and I support you at 100 miles an hour. Thank you. I have Councillor Thibodeau, who's outside. He's not in the hall today. Mr. Thibodeau. I would like to know, you talked about national tournaments. Would 10 courts are there any requests for minimum for these courts for important tournaments? Yes, many tournaments, around 12 courts, and it's for about 120 people. They play in the morning and for medals in the afternoon. It's well done. And the tournaments take place once a month. Everybody likes to go play and participate, and some tournaments take place almost every month. Nationally, it's once a year in Kingston. This year, it was in Alberta. And for the 55 years and older, we attended those as well, and we won medals. I play sports all my life, and I started when I was young. I don't know if you know about slow pitch, softball. I was one of the first to start slow pitch. And we started that at the Aberdeen School in Moncton. And now I live in Dieppe. I've been here for 30 years now. So pickleball is a sport, is really easy to learn. You can come play pickleball at 6 o'clock, and by 8 o'clock, you'll be able to play. And we'll teach you how to be safe in the way you move so you don't get hurt. So it's easy to learn. And I was interested in it. And I started with going into the schools and teaching children how to play when they were interested. But those that were in charge, like the phys ed teachers, they said they didn't have time for something new. But now they're telling us that they're interested in learning. Pickleball doesn't cost much money. It's just a little racket and a plastic ball, and everybody can play. Truthfully, you can start at age 9 to 75, 80 years old. I'm 73 years old, and I have no problem moving about. So it's a sport that can grow. And it's growing faster, not only in Canada, but all over the world. The only problem is that it's growing much too quickly, and it's even more important than tennis now. So people that play tennis don't want us to come close to them. That's why we need places to play so we can teach people how to play it as well. So it's really easy to learn. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Thibodeau. Councillor Turgeon, thank you for being there. It's very interesting. We've received emails as well to explain it. It was interesting. I already played pickleball in Florida a few years ago. It was very popular, and I had the chance to play with my in laws. It's a nice sport. I like the aspect that you gave to integrate this sport with the youth and the intergenerational aspect. We used to think it was only retired people that play it, but it would be a good opportunity to integrate our youth as well and intergenerational activities. You said you had some expertise with construction and you could make recommendations. Do you know what the budget would be for a court? We talked about 6 of them or 10 courts in total. But what about one? It depends on existing courts. You have to do the analysis of soil and you need fences. So it depends what you have there already. It's similar to tennis. It has a court. And you wanted to work in partnership with the tennis club and maybe even borrow courts. So you could have 6 courts with 3 courts, so, and they agree with that as far as schedules go? Because I saw, and I have another question afterwards. Last spring, we spoke with the tennis club, and the president of the tennis club and I said, yes, we would share certain courts and hours, but when we put tape on some courts, because they didn't want us to paint, so we had a few disagreements. We don't want to fight, so we ended up back at Mathieu Martin. And I know that at Mathieu Martin, they may take their tennis courts to enlarge their gym. So one of the teachers wants a bigger gym because there are more and more youth. So my question is, the ideal would be how having all these courts together. But did you think even before the centenary was a possibility, is there another place in town that would be interesting as an option? I have no idea. We have those courts are available. We saw tennis and racquetball and the same thing, and we could share the clubhouse because porta potties aren't very interesting for provincial tournaments. My question when I read this and after all our discussions, sometimes we see an idea uh, closely. So I was wondering if there are any other places available. I look at the Rotary Park where they play horseshoe and they have really nice installations, but I don't see anybody there playing horseshoes. So would that be a good possibility, an option? Well, for 10 courts, well, is it really, you really want to stay at the Centenary Park? Personally, like Jean-Marc, I find this project very interesting. And then with all the tournaments, we can see even bigger. It's a sport that has a future. And you spoke about the intergenerational aspect too. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Laboutier. Thank you for the presentation. I went to see a few times, but I didn't play because the waiting line was too long. So that's another challenge. Can you play the sport all year? Absolutely. Yes, if you want to build a gym, yes. One or two stories high. Exterior, no, because of the ice, no. Like we're behind Mathieu Martin now. We can play till the end of October, but if we have snow, are we going to ask volunteers to come and remove the snow? I would like to know a little bit more. Right now, you're playing behind the Mathieu Martin school, and there are no lights at night, no. And when school starts, you don't have access during the day. That's it. Because at the end of June, we had 3 groups that played in the morning and 3 groups in the evening. But the beginning of September, the morning group can't be there anymore because the students use it. Some people come and play in the evening with us, but we're limited and we don't have access to the inside of the school, just the tennis courts. The city gave us a porta potty for people to use. They're everywhere in those infrastructures in Dieppe. It's not just you. The association of 150 members, are you registered? Yes, we are. In the spring, we had a Zoom meeting. We were talking about the field at a centenary. We have a master plan and we've answered all criteria. The name is what? Because I tried to find it. I wanted to see if I could register, but I didn't find anything. It's Pickleball Dieppe Association, and you're accredited by the city. Yes. I looked, I couldn't find it. Here they telling me no, but this is a form. I spoke to Sonia a few times. They asked me for an email address, so I sent it for the association. Perhaps you should fix that. Call Pauline about that to ensure everything's okay. So that would put you into another category with respect to the municipality and its activities. Any other questions? Councillor Boudreau, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Claudette, for this presentation for this intergenerational sport. I had the same question as Jose, but I have another as well. I see there are courts in Riverview, Saint Isidore, Bathurst. Do you have figures on the participation in these places? Do they have economic spin offs there? I didn't speak to the other presidents. Riverview has 130 members, Shediac about 150. Bathurst started before us, and they have more than 100. At Saint Antoine, have about 60 to 80. Talking about economic spin offs, before the pandemic, Jeux approached us. They wanted to be a demonstration game. They want us to do a tournament. So pickleball, there's a lot of social activities. So we had a tournament. We needed 2 gyms. And all the money went to the Jeux games. So Saturday morning, we had everything organized with different levels and groups. So pickleball will go into the municipalities and give tournaments, to help youth. Are there any tournaments between Bathurst, Saint-Isidore, Shediac? Yes, there'll be another big one in the Atlantic, and it'll be in Halifax in about 3 weeks. And then there'll be another one in Fredericton and one in St. John. Halifax is the big one. Yeah, there's a smaller, but there'll be about 80 people in the smaller ones. And in Halifax, there should be about 150 people. So there's a lot of participation at the tournaments. Thank you, Mr. Lantagne. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for this presentation. I believe in this project and you have my support. I went to see Wednesday night. It was interesting. It's vibrant. We talk about it for a few years and it's getting bigger now. I would have liked to hear, however, an estimation of the cost. 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. If we decide to do a study, we'll get figures. The other thing, I would like it to be situated next to the tennis court because the arena is there and you could share the clubhouse. So I think that would be ideal. but we'll have to decide upon that.
Advenant que le budget permet pas de
If the
faire
budget does
assez de
not
sports
allow
pour
enough
pouvoir avoir des
courts
tournois, est-ce que
for
c'est quelque
tournaments,
chose qui est
is it
faisable comme ça
something
d'épuiser les terrains de
that
tennis
you
pour
can do to use
en
the
faire un
tennis
peu plus
courts and
accessible?
put temporary lines that you can remove after the tournament? Yes. There's an article in the Globe and Mail in Ottawa painted all their tennis courts with pickleball lines, but that's permanent with paint. Is there something that you can remove afterwards?
OK, ça s'enlève.
We have tape.
OK,
Or you can use chalk.
donc c'est une option, ça c'est une option.
So that's an option. At Dieppe, there was a good tennis court, and you don't have to redo everything from the beginning. And then we put lines, and then you can put fences maybe a year from now. You put temporary fencing in plastic, so you don't need a whole lot. You don't need big clubhouses right now. It's just a beginning.
Moi, de toute façon, je vois ça, c'est pas de voir gros.
It's nice to see big, but
En autant qu'on ait
you have to start
futur, c'est mieux
small. Then there'll be an expansion in the future. You don't want to do it too big right away and then later regret it. My last question, with all the infrastructures we have in Dieppe and the projects like the Uni Center, it's marvelous. Citizens are implicated to find the financing. So, to which point do your members, nothing is decided, of course, I'm thinking out loud. So, if we have the budget to do 4 and you want 8, you'll have to go find people that finance you. Are your members open to that? Or do they think the city is going to do it? Yes, our members are open to that. And there were federal funds as well in Riverview, and the municipality gave them the course, but they got money from a COA. So there are programs. We use them for courts in the school. There are programs. So if the city supports us, and we can tell those organizations, then we will request funds. I believe in this project, but not at any price. The citizens must get involved. But I'm really interested to see a proposal and to see how we can budget it and where it's situated as well. I'll be happy to see how it proceeds. Thank you. Councillor Godbout? I want to thank Claudette as well for all their work. We've worked together for a few years, and I sent you an email as well, and I didn't even know it was you. So it was maybe a little bit formal. Thank you for your presentation. I'd like a clarification on one thing. The season, as far as I know of pickleball, I've seen it at school and gymnasiums during the winter. And this year, I found out you can play it outside in the summer. So to me, pickleball was installations in gymnasiums. If I understand, with COVID, you couldn't use the gym, but in a typical season without COVID, would it be during the winter and fall? And yes, even before COVID, we played outside. Explain the season. Outside, we play from May to October. And when there are big winds, it's a bit difficult. But the middle of October is fine. So at the end of September, the schools used to let us go inside. So we had the Antonin Maillet school and we played there. And then Luminaire, we got that through the city of Dieppe. And Wednesday night and Fridays. So we started at Luminaire and we had 3 courts for people to learn. And then after that, they went to the 6 courts. It's a bit intimidating sometimes. Some people have been playing 5 or 10 years. If you don't really know, that's why we started at Lou McNairin. Do you have a preference between interior and exterior, or is it the same? For me, it's the same thing. Yeah. A bit more challenging sometimes if it's windy. Mr. Melanson, Your Worship, good evening, Claudette and Mr. Melanson. Nice name. The master plan for confirmed that you participated for sports and you've been active. So we'll have a 10-year plan in the fall. We'll have a budget deliberation. So you'll present, we'll present a 5-year plan for capital projects. This is an investment that's important. So I don't have an estimate right now. The staff is working on it. So we have that information. Your request has been received and we'll consider it seriously. And council is open to this type of project. So we'll see what the capacity is and we'll give you a recommendation for your project. Some schools aren't being enlarged yet, so the 3 courts are still there for at least another summer. So we have a bit of time left, but we'll look for solutions and we'll work with your group and the community on your project. I have a question. Typically, it can take 10 minutes or 30 minutes or more. How much time does a pickleball match in a double? How much time does it take for a double or for a single? Double is a bit quicker. It depends on both sides if they're good players. So it'll take time to get a point. So I'd say about maybe 10 minutes. For the single, it's a little bit faster, 7 to 10 minutes. We have different ways. The points go up to 11. Some schools where there's less time, every 10 minutes, we change so that everybody has time to play. Inaudible. Pickleball is like a chess game. You're gonna play with people. You're gonna try to make a move a certain way. So you send the ball the other direction from the person. And it depends upon the handicap too. Yes, it's like a chess game. You have to think before you hit the ball. That's the difference. Either you stay at the bottom or get higher. Played a lot of racket games, and it's like that with everything. But I didn't play pickleball, be it tennis, the tournaments that we've had at Luminary. I was there. We got medals. It's not as if I don't know the sport. That was a while back. Yes, a little while. You can come next month, so Mondays and Wednesday evenings. What's your birthday? Come by. Thank you. No other questions. Thank you for your presentation. And the city manager explained that you're one of a group of many people where the ask is always more predominant than the give. That's perfect for pickleball. Thank you. We're going to take an 8-minute break.
We'll take 8 minutes
Clock
break.
is running.
Alors, on reprend la réunion.
So we resume with the meeting.
Monsieur Richard,
Mr. Richard,
jaser de
who will talk about
Monsieur Mélenchon.
Mr. Melanson,
Comme vous le savez
please.
bien, on a notre projet pilote
As
au
you
niveau du
know, we have
transport
a
à la
pilot
demande
project
qui est en place depuis
about
3 mois,
transportation on
plus ou moins.
demand
Alors,
that
une petite mise
is
à jour de la progression puis
implemented. So there's
des
a little
éléments
bit of
clés
progression and key
qu'on
elements
récupère avec Kodiak
that
Transpo et les
we
clients.
get back
Alors,
with
Luc,
Kodiak
il gère
Transpo
ça
and
7
the
jours par semaine.
customer. Luke is
Puis, c'est la
digesting
meilleure
this
personne à vous
7
expliquer la
days
mise
a
à
week.
jour.
He's the best one to
Monsieur
explain
Richard,
what
bonsoir.
this is all about.
Alors
Good
bonsoir, Monsieur le
evening,
maire,
Mr.
bon du
Richard.
conseil. Donc, fait
Worship
plaisir
the
d'être ici ce soir,
council. I'm
justement
happy
comme
to be here
M.
tonight.
Mélenchon vous l'a mentionné, de
And
vous donner une
Mr.
mise à jour.
Nelson
On a
give
entamé
you
le projet le
an
26
upgrade
juin,
on the
samedi 26
project.
juin,
We
et on vient juste de
project
terminer
which
notre
was
13e fin de
26. We
semaine
just
qui
finished
vient
our
de se
13th
passer.
weekend
Donc,
that
ce
just
soir,
ended.
je souhaite vous mettre un petit peu à l'affût
Again,
de où est-ce qu'on en est avec ça. Donc,
tonight I want to
juste un
tell
petit
you
rappel,
where
c'est
we're
quoi le
at
service à la demande?
this.
Donc, c'est
What
un
is
mode de transport en commun.
service for
Ce n'est pas
demand? It's a
nécessairement un service de
transportation
taxi.
service. It's
Ça
not
demeure un
necessarily a
service
taxi
sur
service.
réservation.
Nevertheless,
Donc, on doit
it's a
faire sa
service
réservation préalable.
on
C'est un
reserve
trajet qui
or on
s'adapte aux clients,
reservation.
donc on n'a pas des trajets
It's a
fixes
trip
comme un autobus
that
typique A,
attached to
comme le 3
client.
trajet, le
Don't have
96,
fixed
94 et
as
95.
the
Donc, c'est un
bus
trajet qui va selon les
93,
demandes
94,
des
95.
clients.
It
Et
goes
c'est un trajet,
according
comme
to
je
the
disais,
demand of the
qui
customer. And
suit même
like I said,
nos arrêts d'autobus,
we
donc on utilise
follow
nos
the
arrêts
bus stop.
actuels
We
et
use
les
the
arrêts
present
virtuels qu'on a créés
bus
sur nos
stop and
nouvelles
the
rues qu'on
virtual
dessert
stops
avec le
that we've
transport à la demande.
created on
Donc,
new
ce n'est pas un
streets
service
that
qui
we
nous
are
apporte à la maison
using.
chez vous.
So it's not a service
C'est une
that
maison
take
qui
us
est à la maison.
home, but it's
Comment ça fonctionne? Mais
how does it
essentiellement,
work?
le
Well,
client fait sa
essentially,
réservation
the
par
customers make a reservation.
une application
We
mobile,
can
soit sur
do
le
it
site
by
ou
a
une application en
mobile,
ligne avec l'application Zelle
mobile
ou au
online,
bureau si les gens n'ont pas
or
la technologie.
if they don't have the technology, if they
Donc,
prefer, they can use a
tous les
phone.
jours qu'il y a des
We're
services pour
available whenever there's service to
faire ces
answer the phone
réservations-là.
and
Une
take the
fois que
reservation.
les informations
Once the
sont
information
entrées,
are
la
given,
technologie
it's
qui
encoded.
choisit
A
l'horaire
technology that chooses the
du client.
agenda,
Cette
the
information est
program,
partagée au client.
the itinerary, and is
Ensuite,
shared
le
with the
conducteur
customer. And
ou
then the
l'autorité
driver, the operator of the
conduit le
bus,
véhicule, lui, au
uh,
point ciblé. Donc,
him or
essentiellement,
her,
les directives sont affichées
follow
sur un écran, sur une tablette.
the
C'est
what
comme ça que le
appears
système
on the
choisit
screen
la destination
on the
de
iPad, and that's how he or
et
she go
finalement, lorsque
from
le
one
client arrive
destination to the other. When the
à l'arrêt,
customer
on partir de
arrive at
l'autobus,
his
il doit
stop to
fournir
get
un
on the
code
bus,
secret
he
qu'il
must supply a
reçoit
secret
par
code
téléphone
that he's received
ou
either by
sur
phone or
l'application
in
ou
his
sur le
app,
téléphone
which
pour le
come
conducteur. Puis
that he
avec ça,
presents to the
il peut
driver,
utiliser son nom.
and he can always
Donc,
use his
il y a
name.
même
The
un
driver
manifeste de tous les passagers
has a manifest of
s'assurer que
all
c'est
the
l'équipe
passengers to make sure
qui
it's
sont
the
là
proper
au bon endroit.
passenger and that they're in
Donc,
the proper
le
place.
projet était le
So the
samedi et le
project
dimanche
was
chaque jour.
Saturday and
Un
Sunday only,
service de 6h30
a
à
service from
10h30 et le samedi et le
6:30
dimanche
to
de
1:30,
10h
and on Sunday
de
from 10 o'clock
10h30 à
to
18h.
10:30
Donc ça,
to
c'était
1800 hours.
le même service qu'on avait
And it was the same
pré-COVID.
service that we had
Parce que vous le savez,
at
durant le COVID, on
pre-COVID
n'a pas eu de
on
service de
Sunday.
dimanche là, avec les restrictions. Donc,
Since COVID, we didn't have any Sunday
on a
service.
continué
So
avec
we
ce
came back
projet-là.
with the
C'est un
level of
service
service
gratuit
that
pour
we
tout le
had
monde. Donc, on a
pre-COVID.
décidé
It's a free
le
service for
transport à la
everybody.
demande, on
We
le
said
fait
that
gratuitement.
transportation on demand, we would offer it
Depuis
free of
3 véhicules
charge.
le samedi
Vehicle, we had
et
2 or 3 on
c'est
Saturday and one on Sunday,
la demande qui était là.
considering the demand that
Et
was
évidemment, on avait
less.
la question
And there
d'accessibilité.
was a
Les
question
autobus sont
of
tous accessibles aux
accessibility
bénévoles.
because
Donc, cette
our
capacité-là
buses
aussi
are
était
all
réalisée.
accessible to
Donc,
wheelchair.
rapidement, parce que j'ai eu une
Quickly,
présentation à l'avance, il y a
because
deux
you've had a
objectifs.
presentation, there were
Un
two
objectif
objectives,
d'opération.
the client
Donc,
and the
certaines choses
operation
qu'on
objectives.
mentionne là,
Certain
c'est clair.
things that we mentioned here.
Notre objectif, c'était
Our
de bonifier la
objective
fréquence
is to modify
pour les
the
trajets, avoir une
frequency
destination
for
directe,
the
donc
trip,
pas de fréquence, des choses comme
direct
ça. Et offrir aussi des
destination
espaces
to
disponibles
avoid
avec le transport en commun.
stopping too much and places
Et
that we could
l'opération,
avoid.
mais c'était
And as
de
for the operation, it was
maximiser
IOPTZ to
les
maximize the resources,
temps qui était
reduce
utilisé par
the
l'autobus
kilometers that
avec
was
des,
used
des,
by the
des
bus
ressources peut-être d'une
and
autre façon.
use resources in a different manner,
Peut-être offrir même
and
l'option
maybe to
pour
offer
certains
even
clients
the option of having
qui souhaiteraient
certain
faire faire
customers
le saut au
that could
transport
make
en commun. Donc, ça, c'est des objectifs qu'on s'est donnés.
a transferred to on-demand service. As for the challenges, well, we've certainly had an adaptation by several customers, but others don't like the concept. And we were expecting that, mind you. Some find it very stressing. The reserve, we're not sure. These are comments that we receive. And there's also the question of confusion about the stop. I'm used to take my bus at this stop. Why can't I take it at the same place? Why do I have to go elsewhere? That was a challenge for the people to explain to them why. We've had certain problems with technology to adapt to the concept, to adapt the parameters so that they can adapt to us. I'll give you an example. For instance, Google was choosing or was privileging the Champlain Street for the buses versus Gova Street. So the bus was directed often on Champlain to come back and cut on Market to go to Gova. At first, we had to make a judgment and to explain that Gova and Champlain should be considered a similar street. According to Google, there was a quicker speed, 60 kilometers on Champlain compared to Gova. These are things if, that had an impact. It's an example that I'm mentioning as for the driver also. It was a challenge of adaptation. We had a good cooperation from uh, transit, from Kodiak Transit, and it was an adaptation to have an iPad and get used to it. It's part and parcel of the process. But two things that we did not expect: the road congestion with the construction that we've had on Acadie Street beyond Champlain. And if you travel on Saturday between 10:30 and 14:15 at 100 hours, well, there's a pile up or traffic jam. And it had an impact. It wouldn't be any different if we had fixed itinerary, but some people said it does not. Your system doesn't work. This caused some problem of perception. We've had mechanical breakdown this summer. Three buses, as you probably know, we had four at one given time. One broke down. We had to let it go in the spring. But our third one is the same decade as the other two. We've had problem as far as that goes. If you have a bus that breaks down, what do? You call another bus from Kodiak Transport. Well, that's a delay. Everybody that was planning something, that it's a delay for them. It's a challenge. We've had solution, but once again, if whether it's a fix, stop or anything else, the same thing would have happened. But we were able to adapt ourselves and bring some changes. Every week we had a meeting on Monday and we made several changes. Change of street like Google was one thing, but we also spread the hours of reservation. We didn't take reservation by bus as of 6 o'clock in the morning. We only started at 8, something we had to get used to. We adapted ourselves the delay of reservation. It went from 60 minutes to 30, and now we're at 15 minutes. One of the reasons we did that is that we realized that some people were in Champlain, they wanted to make a correspondence with another bus, and if they missed their correspondence, they didn't want to wait 60 minutes. Sometimes another bus was there in 15 minutes. So we adjusted ourselves to something like that. And we were able to improve the service. We reduced the distance of walking and for some bus, sometimes we had 300, 400 meters, and that's within the standard that we presently have. All our stops are between 4 and 500 meters, but we reduce it for the customer. And the drivers also receive more information to see their route. Before they only saw one, now they're able to see where they're going for the next hour, the next half hour, and that's better to be able to communicate with the client. These are small pieces that make it that we adapted ourselves along the way. Certain positive aspect, we had a good adaptation by the majority of customers and drivers. We saw an increase of the number of route as the weeks went by. Yesterday, Sunday, we had the best Sunday since the beginning. We've had a gradual transition at the beginning. With the transition that happened, of course, Sunday there's less traffic than during the week, but we adapted ourselves to it. There was a reduction of complaint considerably since the end of August because we had some weekends that were a little bit difficult, but for quite a while we maintained ourselves. And last weekend we had the best weekend with the satisfaction of customers 4.8 on 5. They were able to eliminate correspondence throughout Dieppe, and this is probably what is most appreciated by the client, the customer, not to have to shop plan, make sure that it will arrive on time to make the transfer from one bus to the other. That was a positive, but the duration of the trip also. And finally, not finally, but statistics, things that we're seeking for a long time. Some people, we have statistics now on the number of users trip. The last point is the kilometers. You'll see in the slides that are coming up, we have statistics on the number of kilometers. And we see there's a reduction on that. And these are all positive aspect. I talk about statistics. Well, this slide here, the most important thing here, it might be, well, the number of satisfaction that was done the last weekend included. But until then, we have 20 to 30% of customer that make a note. They they code. They put a code, and it's people who made a reservation with their computer or their iPad, who don't have a way to evaluate or ask the people who made a reservation by phone. But 70% of reservation are done by technology. Only 30% are made by phone. It gives a snapshot, an overview of the whole thing. And 3/4 of the transport are on Saturday out of 100%. If you have any question, don't hesitate. I can continue as you wish, but you have something that you want to know, we can answer your question. Kilometer wise, there may be changes on your slide. We've had amended changes this morning. Maybe maybe different figures than yours. What is important to note, what is surprising, is that on Saturday, with two vehicles, we had a total 800 kilometers that was a pre-pilot project, and now over 12 weeks is 500 kilometers. There's a reduction on the number of kilometers, enormously reduced. During the summer, there might have been less traffic jam, but imagine if we're able to reduce the kilometers on our vehicle, there will be savings on the repair, on the management of assets. It means that our vehicles are traveling when they have to travel, and they don't make detours that they don't have to make. That's what we hold back. That's what we retain. Saturday, Sunday a little less, mind you, because Sunday there's less use. What the voice of the customer did not include all the clients you receive a page. Yes, go ahead. Question, Ms. Godbout. I want to understand these statistics and make a comment. It's a question of efficiency. When we talk about kilometer, I want to see the ratio because for me to have more kilometers because more people are using it. But your ratio, I want to understand your comments. You talk about efficiency. We're more efficient in the way we use the service. When we have fixed route, the bus makes the same route every 30 minutes. So if we calculate the number of kilometers that the two buses would travel on a Saturday would give us 800 kilometers. There's an agenda from 8 o'clock, 6:30 at night, and they travel every 30 hours. It doesn't change. It's 800 kilometers. And with the transportation on demand, they use our route, our streets. According to the demand, it gave us 540 kilometers since the beginning of the project and the last weekend on September the 11th, because it was 447 kilometers. So we service our kilometers with less kilometers. If there was uh, a heavy number of customers, there would be more people in the present route. We analyze it and we say, well, there is a saving in kilometers. If the bus doesn't have to make it to go to Fox Creek, he only has to go to Vanier because he's picking up someone. Then he comes back on Central, or he pick up two or three persons. Well, eventually you'll be able to know that there might be another stop because there'll be more passengers. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify. It's a very good question, and thank you. And I can give you an example of the changes that we made Sunday. We realized our statistics, and maybe later on in the presentation, we said Saturday that we were removing the bus from the road, and we changed it with a van, and it worked very well because we didn't need a huge vehicle. The client, the customer said, finally, oh, we don't need a big one. We try to use good vehicle according to the demand, and it's a test that we made, and others are coming in the weeks to come. But because we had the figures, and it allow us to make decisions. As for the voice of the customers, I give you the details in all transparency. I give you the appendix of all the comments we received since the beginning. Some comments were not too good at some places, but all I can say is that we've had difficult moments, and rightfully so. But I can tell you that the majority of those comments were during 3 weekends when we had mechanical breakdown and congestions. But there were things that we could have done better. And for some time now, it's been nice. We have a survey that we're planning to make with the customer. It will allow people who reserve by phone to participate. It's a survey of 8, 9 questions. It deals with the process. We want to understand what are the needs. And we need more information for decision to be made. It should be done this week. And we plan 1 week, no more, to have the results.
Question, Monsieur Thibodeau.
Question, Mr. Thibodeau.
Oui, Monsieur le maire.
Yes, Your Worship.
Luc,
Look,
j'ai bien entendu qu'il y a
I
une épargne de
understood that there
kilométrage
are savings in kilometers with that, and obviously
Est-ce que c'est
savings in resources if we added these resources
des plus petits autobus
to have
pour
smaller
faire un autoroute
buses,
de plus? Est-ce qu'on
but
pourrait
one bus
facilement
more, could we
agrandir le
easily
territoire comme Jean
widen the
veut faire
territory, go to Lakeburn, go as
jusqu'au
far
chemin Dover?
as the Dover
Et
Road,
puis sur le
and
boulevard Dieppe
on
jusqu'à
the Dieppe Boulevard
Melançon, est-ce que
as far as
c'est
Melanson.
envisageable de
Well,
faire
is
ça?
that something that could be planned? Absolutely. Later on in the alternative that I'm proposing, it's part of the solution that we are planning. And the answer is yes, we can do better. With the same resources that we have, we can offer a better service without additional expenses. Yes.
D'accord, merci.
Thank
J'ai
you.
bien compris ça par la présentation que j'avais lue.
I understood it well in the presentation that I
L'essentiel
read,
était
but
que
it was
c'était
not
de
clear
faire
what you
un
meant
meilleur
by
service
better service for the client, for the
Tu l'as
customer.
bien expliqué.
Now
Merci.
you explain it well. So thank you.
Merci.
Good question. Thank you. Let's continue. Your observation, we noticed we had an over capacity of vehicles. I believe a maximum of 3 to 4 customers per bus. That's the maximum that we had. And that's why we were able to take these data and arrive with a taxi bus. But some optimization, that we need. We've been working at it this afternoon, and it has to do with parameters, and we have to adjust everything. That certain things are coming up. Almost the total number of customers reserved the same day, some only an hour before, and that changes the offer of service, but it can certainly be a challenge because they call. It's like a taxi. They think that the taxi will be there in 15 minutes. The earlier that you call, the better it is. We have to find a happy medium. But if somebody comes and says, "I'd like to have my bus in 20 minutes," well, maybe it'll take an hour. So we try to work with the parameters and see how we can organize the whole thing. But that's something we've noticed. I talk about correspondence that is very positive until now. I'm not surprised with technology. We have people who use the service. We've noticed that there's a lot of immigrants. They use the service, but several of them, it's technology that they're using. We noticed there were a lot of demands that were refused by the system that were demands before the service started on Sunday. Some people would like to have service at 8:30, 8:30, 9 o'clock. It's a new service on Sunday. We can use it, but a lot were refused because we were only starting at 10:30 in the morning. That's an indication there may be a need to start earlier. And that's something we can look at. And maybe there's a need for later on. And that's something we did observe. The map that you see here is the map of Dieppe, and what you see on top is Champlain Street. That is parallel in red. It's Highway 15, if I'm not mistaken. What we see is the heat. The more red it is, that's where we have the highest volume of customers. Not a surprise, but we can see majority of trips are along the Champlain artery that comes the downtown, the density, and go up to Industrial Park on Savoie. These are good statistics to allow us to make future decision. It was just to show you where customers use it and how it's being used. So quickly, I go to the alternative being studied. We're analyzing all of this, and we say, with the slide that I just showed you, maybe there's a need to come back with fixed trip on 93. 93 is the trip that go along Champlain. Majority of trips are asked. That's why they ask. Some people don't like the concept. Maybe we should come back on 93, replace some buses with the van. We try it last Sunday. By the way, we'll try it again next Saturday, also to replace another bus that they're working on. As Councillor Thibodeau mentioned, we want to widen the territory to service the whole territory. That's the advantage with a smaller bus to service Lakeburg and Dover. A big bus to go there is difficult to turn. It's not easy. If we go there for one client, one customer, if we pick up someone just past Fox Creek Street, we pick up the customer as we go up Amiro. The bus has to go all the way in Dover Park before it can turn around. You don't turn a bus on the 10 on the 10 cent. So you pick up the passenger, you can change in a smaller area and come back. So it's a better service for everybody. So this is what we're looking at with transportation on demand, with smaller buses, as Councilor Thibodeau said, we could say no matter where you live, we have a service for you. And we could even extend it to regions who have never had a service beyond the industrial park, go as far as airport. We've had requests from businesses. We could go that far. It's not for tomorrow, mind you, but it's just to say that there are possibilities here. And sooner rather than later, we could make it to Dover and Lake because you may not all know the specificity of the transportation system, but right now Dover has no service on Saturday and Sunday, and they have minimal service during the week. Same with Lakeburg, no service on Sunday. The reason is that with small buses, they're not always active. But with transportation on demand, we could go there. We could offer the same service to everybody all over the territory, and it doesn't cost more. That's something else. These are things that we are studying right now. And we're studying, is there a demand for Sunday morning? Is there also a need to replace fixed route with routes on demand on the week? If we can have it from 6:30 to 19:30, I talk mostly about inside, more south of Champlain. Uh, do we have enough traffic to justify it, or could we do it with two van? We could do it with two. The bus doesn't go there. Two, we could have the whole service. These are things we're studying, and I presented four scenarios that are presently under study. These are not scenarios that we need a decision from you right now. Well, we made a check with Quebec Transport. We have a question from Mrs. Leboutier, will be followed by a question from Mrs. Boudreau. Thank you. It's just a clarification. I'll have other questions afterward. Van, you really talk about the small van that we had with six persons when the schools have, as far as standard, no, a six passenger van is the same vehicle that presently service we call it taxi bus. They're the one that service Lakeburn and Dover. They bring the people to correspond to join our bus at the in Fox Creek and Amiro. They're on service on the week. How many do we have? Two. Two. And remind me, if the person has reduced mobility, what does she do? We have the other system, but it's not on demand. Well, that's one of the problem with one scenario. If we go with six passengers, people with a wheelchair, they have to go on another demand. There's a wheelchair guy that already provides that service. It could be an idea. Until now, we've had nobody in a wheelchair that's used our public transport during the pilot project. It doesn't mean we should not encourage them. It's a very important question. What would happen if we had somebody who would need it? Well, we would be able to help them out. I look a lot of municipality in Quebec, all the vans, the sports vans. I think they have five. They go in the ward. It's interesting. And well, I find that the idea for the city of Dieppe, is there a big difference in price between that van, that six passenger van, and what is it, 60,000, 50,000? Will you find now in nursing homes these 17 or 16 passenger that is stronger or bigger? I don't have the figures. That's something we are analyzing. We are having meeting this week to look at these possibilities. Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm thinking for someone who wants to go to work and he uses the service of on demand, transport on demand. Is it efficient the way it's working? You mentioned that maybe there might be a long waiting period for the reservation. Let's say Saturday morning, I have to go to work at 8 o'clock. Is there a time that I have to reserve it in advance to make sure I can make it to work? Well, the sooner you reserve, the better it is. If you need to be somewhere at 8 o'clock, you can make your demand in the system and say I have to be a certain place at 8. The system will calculate the time it takes, and usually it works. But if you call 15 minutes or half an hour, it could be, there will be a restriction, but the system will figure that they should be able to work it out. Once again, with the highway condition, there are things we cannot control. It could happen that there are delays, like we have with fixed route at the present time. If you look and say want to be a certain place, the system should be able to take you there on time. Can somebody reserve the day before for the next morning? You can reserve 7 days in advance if you want. Okay, fine.
Et Madame Turgeon-Roy.
Sister Jean Roy. Thank you.
C'est quoi, comment on fait la promotion de ça du
How do
fonctionnement?
we promote this,
Voilà,
the
on dit on veut
operation?
encourager que les gens
We say we'd
réservent
like to
davantage.
encourage
Est-ce qu'il
people
y a
to
déjà des
reserve
dates, déjà des planifications
ahead. If I
d'avance?
have my itinerary a
Comment on
week
annonce ça? Comment ça fonctionne? Est-ce que
beforehand,
c'est
how
envisagé?
do people
Davantage, c'est peut-être
do it? How can we encourage people? Those who don't use it, how can we promote this idea? Since it's a private project, we did not go ahead with promotion. We tried to bring those who are there now to make a transition to a new system. But of course, once we've solved everything for 3 or 4 weeks, it's working well. Well, we could start to encourage people, and it comes back with questions that I'm receiving. Maybe there are initiatives that could encourage the people. So we made the promotion on social media. My colleague at communication established a plan. They did certain things, but of course we didn't go all the way because it's a pilot project. We didn't go
Et on continue.
right down the drain. Let's continue. Scenario under study that we're looking at. While we go with status quo without changing anything, there are advantages and disadvantages. Second is we go with the status quo, but the multi-bus. A third one is possibly to return to 93, a fix a route, but supported by two vehicles that are on demand, a kind of hybrid. And here I present a new scenario that you didn't see last week. There's been a lot of changes since last week, similar to what you have, but I call it D2. You have D1. It's really the option presently that the one that is privileged. We would go back to 93 fix and we would add one or two taxi bus on demand. And I'll explain what I said earlier. Be able to access the whole territory with that. We could do it. We have the possibility of the vehicles. That's a privilege. You have the benefit in front of you. If we come back to 93, we can explain to the customer, look, we heard you. You've been patient with us. We thank you. We made a transition for those who didn't like the concept and maybe they decided to leave us. We heard you. We heard you. We could go back to 93, and I think it would be good for some persons. It's the route that has the most that is being used the most. And we can bring a stability with all that. We can widen the territory. That's a big advantages and also price wise. A taxi bus costs half the price. We can have two vehicles, taxi bus, and it's an advantage. There are some disadvantage. There might be a confusion with the people. What is happening? Well, we come back to fix it, so we're not fixed. Well, once again, there's communication to be made, but we have to go through this to arrive at a solution, final solution, and we're almost there. I sincerely think we're coming to a solution that will be there for a long time. And if we have a fixed route, but some people are still not happy with us, maybe we can have fixed everywhere. Well, can't completely go back to where we were not with the success we've had. And obviously, as I mentioned to Mr. Boutier, with smaller vehicle, they're not accessible, but the information we have, we don't have a need for that. It doesn't mean we won't have it in the future. But finally, there's a possible reduction of the hours of public transport if we use a new supplier. But it doesn't mean, as you said, because six passengers is temporary, probably. a smaller size of vehicle, but eventually, if we can have vehicles with 8 to 12 passengers, they're strong and nothing stop that we could probably have public transport that would use these cars. That's why we're in a period of transition. This is the most possible is to return to 93 and also to have one or two taxi bus. And what we're doing this week will give us indication if we were to make changes, it probably would be the second weekend of November. It would be Saturday, November the 13th. I'm talking about the return to 93. The reason I say this is because Operational Y Quebec Transpo, they have a process that make it, they change the route every 4 months. So if I'm a bus driver in Quebec Transpo, I can bid, I can make I can apply for a route that will have my work shift for 4 months. That is happening 3 times a year, and the next is November 13th. That's when we'll be making changes, and it's probably at that time that we'll make a change. It would give us time to prepare the communication that accompany this for a future decision. These are the scenarios that are being studied and come back to the council. That's all. I want small reflection for budgetary. You probably had a question. First one is free of service. The former council, some members are still here. And we are preparing some kind of scenario so that you can decide. It's a question that you can decide shortly for 2022 what kind of a free service you want, if you want gradually with the youth or seniors. Well, we'll come back with information, but I want to let you know so you can start thinking about it. Secondly, is the hours of service on Sunday. We could bring you some scenarios. What is interesting is presently we could spread the hours of service. It would cost less. Sometimes there are things like that that we can do more with less. And finally, if you were ready to extend the service from 6:30 to 21:30, 18:30 to 21:30, that's a scenario we're preparing and we'll present it to you. But start thinking about it. Finally, it may just be some of you like statistics, others need information. If there are things that you would need to make decision, well, let us know. We'd like to have an indication to help you make a decision. So this is for me. Sorry if we went beyond the planned time, but we went around. But time is money, especially when we save it. Madame Godbout,
Merci, Luc.
thank you. Look, uh,
Je me sens très peu connaissante à t'écouter
I
parler de
feel
de ce que vous faites dans la
really
vie, de vos efforts en commun.
ignorant about
Et puis
what
de faire de
you're
cette
talking
passion,
about.
c'est réussir
And
à
every time I
décrocher
have a
après parce que
question,
t'es
you
vraiment
answer.
pour le combler. Alors,
And
merci pour ça, j'apprécie
thank you for the
beaucoup.
comments that you make. I
Je vais te poser
enjoyed
quelques
it.
questions de réflexion, puis
I
parler un peu
ask
du
you a few
défi du
questions and I'll give
changement
you
des
a
choses.
few
Je
signs
savais
because
que
you're
moi,
presenting something.
j'avais
One
pas
of the
encore
question
entendu
that I'm asking
le
myself
potentiel ou
that I
le
didn't hear,
potentiel.
but
Qu'est-ce que tu
Councillor
verrais dans
Liberty brought it up.
les
They
défis
would
sur
look
ton
at the
côté?
possibility of
Comment
aiming
ils
a
je pense
certain
par exemple,
ward
lorsqu'on a
to
fait un peu
increase
le tour des
the
installations dans les
usage when we
endroits,
went around the
à
installation
certaines
we have.
personnes, c'est
You
clairement là, ce
arrive
qui
in
va
some
bloquer la
wards where
densité
we
des
try
gens.
to
Mais si on
increase
augmentait la
the
densité
density.
des
If we
des
want to
logements,
increase the
c'est clair
density
qu'on
of
a plus
these
de place
area,
pour les autos,
it's
pour
clear that
il faut qu'on ait des gens
there's
qui
not
soient
enough
satisfaits
people.
des
We need
communs.
people who will
Puis je
use
pense qu'il y a quand même un
the
lien
transport.
entre la
If there's
planification
not
urbaine
a
et
wedding
l'urbanisation
between
urbaine qui fait souvent
the
planifier ce qu'on appelle des
question
zones
what is
d'aménagement.
proposing
Mais
and what
d'habitude,
exists and
les
with
environnements
the idea
urbains,
that we're creating
ça va créer un
places
environnement où
will
c'est plus
create
propice pour eux
area
d'aller
where
souvent
it's
dans
more
des communautés
appropriate, more
organisées
advantageous for
ou
them
vivre en
to
commun.
use the system
C'est
of
moi qui
public
te le dis,
transport because
si tu
you
veux
go
essayer de
up a few
comprendre un peu
streets, the
mieux.
only thing you see are two
Si,
cars in
c'est pas
each yard, and it's not.
Est-ce qu'il n'y aurait pas
I
un
wonder if
intérêt
there
justement
would
dans la
not be
façon
an
dont
interest, an
on pourrait peut-être
advantage
essayer de viser
to
certains
try
quartiers
probably
pour aménager
focus
la
in
promenade, pour avoir
certain
du
area
passager qui va
to
c'est peut-être pas nécessairement la
reduce
place gagnante
the
parce qu'on
traffic
on
jam
risque
and
de
try to
déjà
bring the people in.
environner
One of the reflections I've had, it's a good suggestion, and I think that of the Belle Forêt, that's the one I had in mind. Well, presently, I know we have a client who lives up Belfort. She works on Saturday. She told us, she said, has to walk down to Fox Creek and take the other one that is not very safe. And now they're talking about a stop on Belfort as a kind of street that we could start promoting and say, do you know, with a little bit of, wouldn't mind to change the behavior. And anyway, well, yes, maybe Cartier, anyway, a few places. Thank you, Mrs.
Madame
No,
Gauthier.
Madame Boudier.
Merci, Monsieur le maire.
Thank you, Worship.
Je vais passer. C'est que je vais revenir sur les questions, là.
I want to come back on a question.
Suite à ça. Excusez-moi, j'ai deux différents blocs.
Sorry.
OK. Premièrement, est-ce qu'on est
First of
satisfait
all,
qu'on a le bon
are we
équipement?
satisfied that we have
Je vous pose ça, là, je vais
the
vous
good
dire,
hardware?
parce que
And when I look
il y a
at this, I
plusieurs
don't know.
plateformes
There
à
are several
au niveau des
platforms.
offres
At the end of the
d'écoute
day,
sur les services
there
en
are different
français,
ones. I know we
au
want
Québec, les
service in
services sont
French.
différents. Il y a
In Quebec,
Exo,
they're different. They're
il y a
EXO.
il faut
And once
j'avais
again,
cette réflexion-là, j'avais quand je voyais
that
un petit peu
reflection,
bien aujourd'hui parce que
there were complaints was good today because you
il y
said
a beaucoup d'adaptations. Ça,
everything
c'est un
new.
point que
There's a
j'aimerais
lot of
assez
adaptation. There's
facilement
something.
avancer.
The more
Je sais
we
pas si
go ahead, I don't
Excellente
know. It's an excellent
question.
question. I don't have the answer.
De nouvelles technologies qui
I know
existent.
there's
Ce
all
qu'on
kinds
voulait,
of
c'est
new
qu'on était rendu
technology in
avec,
this
vous
project
l'avez dit à un moment donné,
that
c'est
we
pas
went
un
with.
start-up.
As it's a
C'est pas
startup.
nécessairement une
It's
compagnie
not necessarily a
établie à 100%
company
dans le
that
domaine.
was
Il y a
established
des avantages
100% like others, but there
d'améliorer ses
are
systèmes, de
advantages
s'améliorer en
such as
adaptation
bilingualism. We knew there was an
continue.
adaptation, but we were
Les
happy
systèmes de
with that.
bus,
And
comme
there
je disais,
are
je dirais que c'est
systems
pas
of
juste
bus like
prendre
EXO.
des
It's not only
applications
the Texas, but it's a
des gens à
combination
l'accueil,
between
des
the bus,
applications
tramway,
de
and
toutes sortes de différentes choses.
there's all
Il y a
kinds of
parfois
different
même
things.
un gros
Maybe
travail
transport,
de mise à
Transpo
jour
made
quand
a
on a
lot
mis
of
la technologie à
work in
l'intérieur
3 or 4
pour
years.
améliorer
The improvement in
c'est quoi? Parce que
technology.
ça
It's
va
only
arriver à un
recently
moment
there's
donné qu'il y a des choses que
perception
récemment
with
qui arrivent dans le
electronic mapping. There's
je pose
something
ma
coming
question
up
là
for
est-ce qu'on
them.
a
I'm
besoin de
even
plus
asking myself, do
d'opérateurs?
we
Est-ce qu'on
need
a
all that
assez
technology?
de
Do we
demandes? Je
have
sais pas. Est-ce que
enough
c'est juste une réflexion
demand? I
que
don't
vous
know.
avez
That's
là,
something we
est-ce que
should
c'est une
think
nouvelle
about. I don't
technologie?
have the answer, but it's a very
Je
good
sais tout de
question
suite aussi que
because we
si c'est
know
une
right
application
now
et que
that's
quelqu'un
one
peut faire une
application. But
application
Quebec Transport has another application. So
ça peut
for the
être amélioré
clients to have
facilement.
two applications may not be the best
Excellente
thing.
intégration
So
dans
it's a
les
question of
systèmes de
integration. We
transportation.
had that discussion, and
Question
anyway,
suivante,
it's an important
Mais
question.
ça,
We'll
c'est
look
un
at it,
point qui était une option aussi là, par nous autres. Mais
even to service ourselves. Well,
quand tu parles des coûts de prise de
when you
décision
talk about
sur
the
l'avenir, c'est certainement
decision making for the
d'avoir, d'être
future,
capable de
I would like to
visualiser
be able to
cost-effectif
visually
les coûts de faisabilité, de combiner
conceive
les
the
options,
feasibility
comment ça
cost
va
for
se
each
décompaser.
option.
Une
Presently, how
bus
much
qui
does
est
it cost?
à 93 comme que
The
Hier,
93
peut-être de
bus, as
transporter
we are
de l'addition.
suggesting
J'ai
to
fait
go back to it,
juste
I look at
un
it
chiffre, j'ai
and
dit,
I made
en
a few
moyenne, ça
figures.
va
I
être
said on the average, it gives
75% de vie.
7.5% on Sunday.
Plus en
That
vient 75%.
using
Premièrement,
75%,
on va
well, you say
dépenser.
how much
En
money are
même
we
temps,
going to
on va
spend?
dépenser
But
pour
we
le
have to
passager
spend and we
qui
have
va
to offer the service to be
être
able to make the
si c'est
system
un
work.
couteau à
So
deux tranchants,
it's a double
ça va être
edge
intéressant. Là, je voulais
axe.
creuser avec
Well, I
les
wanted to
puis
come out
ça va
with
être
the cost,
intéressant
and
parce que tu vas
it
dire,
will
oh,
be
comment ça va voir
interesting because, like you
dans les
say,
années
we are seeing data that we never had before. Well,
on commence un projet pilote, on
we're
pense qu'à
starting a
terme,
pilot
dans le futur,
project. We
c'est
think that
ça va
maybe in
être
the
top.
future
Ça
it
serait
it will
soit
be
commencer
workable. It will be
avec
good,
nous,
but
on
it's to
a
start
plusieurs
maybe not
partenaires, mais
us,
je ne sais pas qu'est-ce qui
but
va être décidé.
hire a
Mais
firm.
ça
I
va
don't
être
know what will be done. What are
une
the decision
qu'est-ce
making
qui est la pondération
criteria and what is the
satisfaction de la
weight of
clientèle
each
qui
one?
va
Is it
être
satisfaction of
comment
clientele?
aider
Is it the cost
à desservir la
that we
population.
will
Et ça, il
use
faut qu'ils
to
s'adaptent
serve the
parce que les
population?
communautés
Because a lot of
sont
city
déjà sur
are
la demande maintenant.
already on demand right
Mais
now.
ça serait intéressant de voir c'est quoi
Would be
l'âge de nos
interesting
clients
to
le
see what
samedi et
are
dimanche.
the
Puis comment
age
ils
of
vont
our customer on Saturday and Sunday.
d'accord avec le
Sunday,
samedi puis
I
après
may agree with
excusez-moi, là, je sais que ça va sonner
the
discriminatoire de
whole.
ce jour on va arrêter. Mais la
It may
messe du
sound
dimanche,
the
est-ce
Sunday
que
mass.
ouais, peut-être que c'était des choses à la
maybe that's it's on demand. Well, it doesn't have to be. We have to be careful also because we'll get information, but maybe we want to be able to compare more and make a decision that is rational. That's it. Well, I will get involved in the debate because if
en termes de projet pour le conseil puis pour
as for
notre
project for the
population,
council and our population,
on a
I think
toujours voulu
we've always
se
wanted
distinguer
to distinguish ourselves
en offrant un
by
service
offering
flexible,
a service that is flexible,
mais aussi
but also
maximiser
to
l'utilisation du transport.
maximize the
Puis
use of public transport. We
on
all
vit
know
dans un milieu
we live in
semi-rural
an area that is
ou
semi-rural
semi-urbain
and semi-urban.
beaucoup d'habitudes
There's a lot of
que
habits
les gens n'ont pas.
that
C'est
people don't
de
have.
prendre un autobus,
The
un
one of
métro.
taking the bus, among
Alors, si on
others.
veut
So if we want
continuer à développer notre
to
service de
continue
bus,
developing our
bien,
bus
il faut
service, we'll have to find a mean
distancer
to distance
aussi
ourselves from
de nos
our
voisins.
friends, from our
Ce qui
neighbors,
va, ce qui va
uh,
donner
because
l'impression,
I have the
ça c'est mon
impression
avis,
that,
excusez-moi, Monsieur
correct
Lagacé,
me, Mr. Richard, if I'm wrong, but
on veut peut-être aller
I
plus vite
think
que sont
maybe we
sont
want to go
capables
faster
d'aller.
than them, faster than they are
C'est
willing to
leur
go.
nouvelle mentalité
Maybe
aussi,
things
mais
have changed. Maybe the mentality has
on
changed over there,
essaye de donner un
but we're
service au
trying
plus
to
grand
give
nombre.
a service to the greatest
Euh,
number
je
of
suis
people.
pas convaincu, si on s'arrête trop
I'm
longtemps
not
sur la
convinced if
question
we
du
stop
coût,
too long on the question of cost, we will
sur le
stop
transport en commun,
because
c'est une
public
question de
transport is
service
a
qui
question
doit
of
être
service
développé,
that
une
is to
question
be
de
developed
culture.
and
Je peux
change a
pas vous
culture.
dire depuis
Change a
40 ans
culture. I'm not
la
telling you
question
anything
du
you don't
cost.
know.
Ça existe
Well,
encore.
change a
Mais
culture is still exists.
c'est pas qu'on doit pas
I'm not
regarder le
saying
coût.
we must not look at the
Si on
cost.
veut
I'm not
regarder le
saying
coût,
that. But if we want to
je
look
dirais
at
que
the
la
cost,
première place
I would say the first
à
place
faire la
to
comparaison, c'est
make a
qu'est-ce que ça nous
comparison
coûte
is what
présentement
does it
avec
cost us
Kodiak, puis
presently
avoir
with
des
Kodiak
autobus
and to have big
et tout ce
buses
qui vient avec ça,
and
la
everything
mécanique.
that come with it, the
Là, ça fait longtemps
mechanical aspect.
Ça fait longtemps qu'on parle aussi
We've been
d'électrique.
talking
On parle
about
de véhicules électriques.
electric
En Nouveau-Brunswick, on
vehicles. Well,
produit
there are some now. They
ici au
produce
Canada.
them here in Canada.
On a tous ces
And
facteurs-là à
we
tenir
all
compte.
have these factors to
Quand on
keep
veut
in mind,
retenir compte dans la prise
that
de
we
décision,
must keep in mind the
je pense
decision
que ça
making.
doit être une prise de
And I think
décision
it
aussi
will
qui doit se
be
faire par étapes.
decision
Je
making
pense
that
que ça, c'est
will
une première bonne
go along
étape
the
pour le
step. That's
Canada
the
depuis
first
des
good
années.
step, the first one for a long time.
Puis au moins, on a des
And
données.
at least we have data.
À ce jour, Kodiak ne peut même pas nous
Uh,
dire combien de
Today,
clients
Kodiak
viennent du Dieppe.
can't even tell us how many customers
Si
come
vous êtes
from
rendu là,
Dieppe. Are they there now? Well, we
je viens de
wish.
commencer avec un souhait. Là,
I just started with a
ça
wish.
répond à ma question.
I wish we can have the information with the new technology that they put forward. That's a question we asked them in this. This is something we are able. How much transfer correspondence exists at the in Champlain? And 93, we say it's busy. He said because we have more people from outside that come to work in Dieppe that use it, or is it our client that go to University of Moncton? If we had that information, we could make enlightened a decision. We expect to receive answers. Fine,
Merci,
Mrs.
Monsieur le
Boudreau.
maire.
Thank you,
C'est
worship.
juste un petit
Well, it's
commentaire.
just a small comment.
Je trouve que ça
Would
serait
I
vraiment
find that it
important
would be
de
really
trouver une
important
façon
to
d'inciter les
find
gens
a way to
à
incite people
l'utiliser de plus en plus.
to
C'est
use
sûr
it
qu'on
more and
voudrait
more. Of
beaucoup
course,
plus
we would
d'achalandage
all
de
want
bus.
to
Je
have
sais pas
to
s'il
be
y aurait
busier
une
on the
façon
bus, more
au niveau
people on the
de
bus. I don't know if there
communication,
would be
faire
a
en
way
sorte que souvent
with
sur les bus,
communication to have more
on
publicity on
s'entend
Facebook or
dire
even have
c'est pas une bonne
contests, a
idée de
competition.
poste que tu auras un bus, tu vas
Each
mettre un
space
tour
that you
gagnant
fill, you
juste pour
have a chance to
que
win
les gens
so
veulent
that
y
people
aller.
have the taste to use it
L'incitation à y aller.
and
Oui.
and then to incite them to use it. I'm convinced, and I said it here before to the council. If we have a efficient service, people will use it, and we can promote We can put money and promote everything we want, but if we're not promoting a good product, it's worth nothing. So we have to start by making sure that we have a system that is viable, efficient, and I think we're almost there. The people who use the system presently, they find there's more efficiency because they can go from destination A to destination B faster. That's a big improvement. Small vehicle just to spread the service to other sectors as Sir Thibodeau asked. That will bring more traffic, more people. That's what we have to solve before we start saying we have a good system. And that's where we have to put the efforts. And then the rest will be automatic. But good initiative. There's a lot of things happening today. I don't know if you know, but the public transport was free today because of the election. That's an initiative that was suggested by the city of Dieppe. And a few years ago, these are some of the things that we can do to publicize the week of the environment, but maybe we have a better service that we can sell through communication. I want to make sure also that we don't fall into a cycle because it's not busy. We don't invest in transportation. It goes both ways. Do we have to make more communication so people have the taste to use it? But we have to offer a good service, as you say. So,
Monsieur le maire, si vous me permettez, puis
Your Worship, if I
je
may,
vais
I just want
ajouter
to
une
mention one thing that
proposition.
Mr. Richard told me in the
Projet
past. Once we
spécialisé
have
de
our
services pour
network and the level of service that we want to serve in our
projet pilote
community,
pour une
the
réussite.
pilot project be a
Ensuite, les
success.
véhicules
Afterwards, we can
automatisés
invest
et les
on
véhicules numériques
infrastructure that be
pour
minibus
créer un territoire
and
plus
we'll have a
efficace.
full area
Évidemment,
of service. We'll know
les
how to
citoyens
invest
également devraient avoir un
and
service gratuit.
do we want to
Alors,
go as
c'est
far
ça
as to have a free
l'initiative
service?
du
Pilot
programme
project was
spécialisé
one element.
qui a été
Once we
lancé
have that
récemment
element
et
completed and
le
analyzed,
démarrage
and
est
it's
excellent.
working
Ça va
out,
avoir un plan
then
sur le
we
long
can
terme
make
pour le
a
suivi
longer term, and the
et
promotion will
pour
follow,
les
and
réussites de résultats de la
then
promotion.
success will promote on itself. The
Transportation,
pilot
oui,
project
on
have
devrait avoir
must have, be patient.
un
Yes,
centre
we
de
don't want
mobilisation,
a
mais
transportation with
pour nous, c'est
100%
important.
use.
Puis,
But a pilot project is
c'est
important for us, and Nick is making a lot of effort with the team,
mettre un système
and
en
then
place
we'll be able to put a
et
system
politiquement,
with an infrastructure
Quoi, à peu
and
près une
whatnot.
centaine de taxes?
Does it cost us about a cent a tax? About
Just
approximately.
saying.
si on parle juste de Kodiak, si on parle juste de
Ouais,
Kodiak,
ouais,
Tax
juste
for
Kodiak.
Kodiak,
le
yes.
transport à la demande, le transport adapté,
Transport
ça
on
va être
demand, adapted
OK,
transportation.
merci.
Another discussion. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Richard.
Thank you. I come back on October 12th with recommendation. Thank you.
Maintenant, c'est là que ça devient
Now,
exciting.
this is where
Now, this is going to be exciting for
Gestion des actifs.
everybody. We're going to talk about asset management.
Bonsoir.
Good evening, Your Worship, Councillors. It's a good way to finish an evening talking about assets before you will watch the elections.
Il y en a qui sont plus excités que d'autres.
Some are more excited than others. Inaudible.
Si tu attends pour les résultats,
If you're waiting
on va
for
être ici
the
longtemps.
results, we'll be here for a long time.
On va commencer sur gestion des actifs.
So, asset management, it's less sexy talking about those we have already rather than a new uniplex or pickleball courts. But when we have assets, we need to take care of them.
C'est quoi la gestion des actifs?
Why is asset management? What is it? It helps us to manage assets in a responsible way with the capacity to pay at long or medium or long term, short term. A short term for certain projects, we will want things right away, but you have to think of future generations as well, of our children and grandchildren that will have to pay for those infrastructures in the future. So the responsibility of elected officials is to give citizens services with the assets of the municipality. Yes, they pay taxes, but they want to receive something in exchange.
Le rôle du conseil
So the
versus la
role
stratégie
of
dans la gestion des
council
actifs, j'ai attaché un petit mémo qui
with
explique ça aussi en
response
détail.
with
Je l'ai
respect to this responsibility, I gave you a sheet of paper, but I'm not going to read it here. It's a bit long.
responsabilité du conseil
There are responsibilities of council to know the information to help make decisions. When you talk about budget, you have to know what is going on with our actual assets and to be responsible for expenses strategically with the objectives of the municipality. Sometimes we have good projects, but it's not linked to the strategic plan. Another thing, another role of council is to give a good, clear vision to follow so that citizens know the capacity to pay. As employees of the municipality, we have good ideas, but sometimes the councillors know better the thoughts of the citizens. They've spoken to you, you know what they want. So as to give a good way to the employees to make the right decisions. Here I have the strategic plan from 2016 to 2020 to show that asset management was part of the plan. Now we have 2020 to 2024 that was revised recently, and we're still talking about asset management. So it's part of the strategic plan. A little bit of history of how it came to the city of Dieppe. In 2012, we had new accounting standards put into place. So we had to have a detailed inventory of assets. We used to know what we had, but there was nothing in paper. We didn't know we had 200 kilometers of pipes, for example, written on paper, and what the age of the infrastructure was, and buildings and all that. So we hired a consultant to do the inventory in detail, all the assets that we own, vehicles, recreation, equipment, parks, trails, everything as infrastructure in the municipality. Once we received this detailed inventory, we started creating replacement programs. The first thing, I don't know which year it was created, it was management of asphalt. It represents about 50% of the assets of the city. So we have a program, started with 2 million, and we're up to 4 million now just for roads. Then we had a program for the fleet to replace our vehicles. And the last one added was about 2-3 years ago. We're putting money aside for our buildings. They're still very young in Dieppe. We destroyed the former centenary arena to be replaced. In 2015, we had a leadership program for asset management. 5 francophone municipalities sat around the table with a consultant to explain this management. On the Anglophone side too, Fredericton, Vancouver, Ottawa were part of it too. We're now with Dieppe, Saint-Quentin, with Plessisville and Joliette. And then we hired a consultant to help us create our governance structure and our asset management committee to develop a policy. The policy was adopted on November 27, 2017. Afterwards, the province came in with certain obligations respecting assets. We have to meet these to be able to get the gas tax. So they said if we didn't abide by that, we wouldn't have this gas tax. The plan was accepted by the province on November 27, 2018. Yes, we uh, abide by the obligations of the province. And there's still some villages or municipalities that don't abide by them. So now we're expecting criteria from phase two with more detailed plans for asset management. After the creation of the policy and the strategy, we got a new program of municipal management assets to help us to prepare plans for the asset management. So we had 5 plans accepted at the beginning of the year in January with the former council. The first one was streets, then buildings, and the sewer system, fleets, and then the installations, the facilities. So all these assets are detailed and what is the maintenance done on them as well. A new obligation from the province was supposed to arrive during the summer. We didn't hear anything. Perhaps they're waiting for other municipalities to finish phase one, but we received training by the trustee for infrastructure network. We were 4 or 5 municipalities in New Brunswick to get this training. They know what the new obligations will be from the province, so we're a little bit ahead of time for what's coming ahead. What is the policy for asset management? It's a statement adopted by the council so that the city puts into place and continually improves its approach with good practices and development. So we want to put into place our assets. For example, we could replace one bus for 2 smaller vans. So another example for the infrastructures and finances. The asset management policy was revised lately during our training. There are no big changes. They thought that each council should revise the policy and re-adopt it so that the people who don't know about asset management would be able to learn or know what we're talking about when we're talking about asset management. So at the next council meeting, we'll attach this policy. The strategy doesn't have to be approved officially, but it's the strategic plan. It's a document of 40 pages that talks about the policy, a little bit of everything, the plans of the committee for the next 3 years to improve the management of the assets. So it's the program, development of the program. This is a table on the state of the assets belonging to the municipality. You can see at the bottom, if you wanted to change all the assets, it would talk 882 million to change everything. And when we did the same exercise in 2012 to prepare the inventory, the replacement cost was 455 million. We've had additions. Dieppe Boulevard has been extended. There's a lot of new things, but costs have increased during the past few years. The time being, 75% of our assets are in very good condition. Dieppe is recognized as a young municipality, and the assets are represented in the same way. Like I said a while ago, the majority of our buildings are between 2006 and today. If you go back to 2012, when the inventory was done, 86% of our assets were in good condition. It's starting to get older now, but we're still in a very good position. What I was talking about a little while ago, to replace existing assets. For the next 100 years, with our assets, we must invest 21.3 million annually to take care of them. Today, we invest around 13.8 million for replacement of our assets. So we have $7 million missing, but they're still very young. So in the midterm, in 20 years, our buildings that are almost new today will have to be repaired, the roofs replaced, electricity will need work. The same thing for our streets. We don't see it often, but the pipes underneath have a life of 80 to 100 years, and sometimes some of them have 70 to 80 years old. And to come back to 2012 to compare, we did this then rather than 21 million that we should have to invest. At that time, it was 9 million that we had to invest, so it doubled. So we invested about 5.8 million versus 13.8 million. For percentage, we invest 65%, and at that time it would have been 60%. So the figures are higher now, but now we're investing much more than we did in the past. Of course, the consequences of the nonconformity, what can happen at some time, our financing is not optimized. Rather than get the minimum, we'll buy two great big buses, for example, for 5 or 6 people. A question, Councillor Goodbout. This a table when you were talking about budgeted investments, what we invest, the amounts we have there, are those coming from revenue sources of the residents? Or is it gross? Do we receive funds from the province or the federal government? It's a bit of a hybrid situation. It includes the gas tax. We're going to receive 1.8 million from that for programs for next year. Almost every year there are new programs. If we don't know about them, it's not included, but it will come into this 13.8 million. So what we receive would be in that, but what we haven't received yet isn't noted there. That's it. For the consequence of a bad management, there could be conflicts in priorities in different sectors in Dieppe. if you don't do the most with the financing, then everybody's going to try to drag the blanket over to their side. We want to work as a team and prioritize whether it's going to be a trail, a street, or a building. That is the priority. As well, what are the needs rather than what is nice to have? Nice to haves are much more fun to announce, of course, but you have to find a middle. The city is growing, so we have to manage with what we have and what is new. We have to pay for what we built. We have a deficit that we're going to have to settle. So we have to think of the future generations and financial capacity for the future of the city and the residents. So consequences of non-conformity follows what I was saying. We have the same consequences. The value of a management plan, it's a foundation for the business case of the city. They represent services. So we can offer services with our infrastructure, then the financial plan of the city is not representative. So we have the policy, strategy, and management plan. So as a committee, what do we want to do in the future? So we have a couple points that want to evaluate operation costs with each kilometer of street that we have to remove the snow or fill in the potholes. With public works, they have the same budget, the same staff, and we give them more work to do. So if we add a kilometer of street, we need $10,000 more for the public works budget for this new street. A list of streets to widen, Book Road will have a trail now. Some other streets are narrow as well, so we might want to add services. We have to make a list of those streets because to widen them, it takes more money to maintain them and to build them. And lobbying with the provincial government for designated highways. We have that in budgets. We're going to talk about it. They're the property of the provincial government, but financing is not always there. We're not the only ones. It's like that all through the province. Another thing we could do is a survey on satisfaction of users. Like I said a while ago, residents pay taxes and expect services. But at what point are they willing to pay for services? In Dieppe, our standards are high for services, they're very good. But at what point will we reach when we say that's enough? So that's about it for my presentation. Do you have any questions? Councillor Boudreau, thank you, Your Worship. We evaluate infrastructures that we have, and I was wondering if there was a management of natural assets. Is there an inventory of our trees and all that? Very good question. During the last years, natural assets are coming more into the focus, but certain people, this Ottawa, for instance, is a bit more specialized. Fredericton is doing some things. It's part of our discussions, but we don't have anything on paper. In our management plan, we mention natural assets, but it will come that we will add them, but we don't really have an inventory. We have parks and trees, but we don't really have an inventory of what we have as natural assets. We're discussing it, and the next steps will be considered. Thank you. Councillor Boutier, thank you, Your Worship. Firstly, bravo, congratulations. This report on management and policies, I think citizens deserve a good management. So, congratulations. This is exceptional to see it, and the details are transparent. I have a question. We based on statistics of the Canadian municipalities, what were the rates of what we would put aside and the growth, future growth. So this data wasn't decided by us or standards, right? We have a financial plan, and we wanted to reduce the ratio of debt to $1.5 million per year, but there's nothing that stipulates that a municipality that is growing should invest 40% on new stuff and 60% on assets. There's not really a magic figure. I don't think it would be 50-50. We should invest 50% on new things because we have a bit of a deficit right now. We're basing ourselves on our knowledge. All municipalities have they're at a different point in their growth. Some cities stopped growing, so they stopped at their level of services. The other thing is the level of service. Do we want to give streets with 0% potholes everywhere in the town, or can we accept 10%? So that's what we're talking about. Are we going to have a baseball field that so this is going to affect money that's invested in assets. I'm talking now about replacement costs, but we also discuss how much it takes to maintain, and those are figures as well. Mechanics who is repairing vehicles, for instance, we add that as well. If you don't do the maintenance, then you're going to have to replace them sooner. So the figures that I give you, we base ourselves on for a vehicle to last 8 years. With a mechanic, perhaps it can last 1 or 2 years longer. Sometimes it'll break down sooner, just like our underground pipes. Sometimes they have a life of 80 to 100 years. This is an estimate because we still don't have any that are 80 to 100 years old. If we see that at 70 years old and they're all falling apart, we'll have a problem. But if at 90 years old, if they're still good, then we can keep them. It changes the statistics. But for your original question, we don't have a magic number saying we should invest a certain amount of money for the new things. Unless our treasurer tells us that 70% management and 30% new. But this last year with the Uniplex, it was the contrary because it was new. But on average,
Dans un des, je pense dans mon l'état des actifs, mon rapport sur l'état des actifs, je parle
on my report,
je vais en parler
I
des
talk about the new
les
installations
dernières années versus
and the budget
dans les 5 prochaines années.
last 10 years compared to the 5 next years for asset management. It comes back to my question. It's an estimate. We could maybe be in positive as well. We're looking at the worst scenario here. I thought that maybe there had ratios, but thanks for your answer. Like streets, for instance, have different
On fait l'auscultation à chaque 3 ans, ben, on vient ajuster nos estimés.
an age, a lifespan. Sometimes 10 years is good, and we can add another 2 or 3 years. So annually, we adjust the number of years.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Councillor Godbout.
Moi, je reviens un peu sur le commentaire.
I'm coming back to
J'apprécie beaucoup
Councillor Boudreau's comment. I respect a lot the governments
de ramener pour approbation une politique révisée.
to come back with an approved revised policy. I think it would be good to add natural assets. So for the next 4 years, with our assets, I think a lot of people have mentioned our natural assets and where we're at for the future. It would be very useful as information. And I would want to vote for a revised policy that doesn't mention that. I know we're developing, but I think it should be added. And even for the staff, we want to know that it's an element that we need. This is my personal advice. Thank you for your information on this table. And my question is maybe for the city manager. When I look at asset management, when we look the reorganization of the municipality, this is a picture that would be an item to discuss because we have those ideas or scenarios that we could encourage. And this picture could change if we're amalgamating with communities as neighbors. And I'm looking at the amounts for streets, and that has the biggest value in our management. Yes, it's about 40% of assets, and underground sewers is 40%. Thank you, Councillor Boutier, for your question. This would be the worst scenario. And what is coming in the next few years, the worst scenario, we should probably examine it. We should take that into consideration. Thank you. I can add as well that it's part of the discussions that we had with the local governance. We still are waiting for answers, and all the financing on the territory or the municipality, if is annexed because for local services in the neighborhoods, in the LSDs, the highways is really stretched. Yes, of course, there's a big question, and it'll be part of the dialogue with the White Book.
Si je vous dirais que beaucoup de... Comment le dire poliment? qu'il y a beaucoup, qu'il y a un manque de sérieux au niveau provincial avec la gérance des actifs. Je pense que je ne me tromperai pas beaucoup. Puis, comme municipalité, les attentes sont toujours plus grandes. Puis je ne parle pas juste pour Dieppe, je parle en général des municipalités qui se tiennent debout, sont beaucoup plus actives et depuis bien longtemps dans la gestion des actifs. Je sais que c'est rien que 2012, là. Et 2012, c'est déjà bien à l'avant de plusieurs autres municipalités. Et certainement à l'avance. Il y aurait beaucoup plus d'argent qui serait dépensé. Puis ça, c'est en dépit du fait que les municipalités ont accepté 6 ans passés, 5 ans passés, ont accepté de prendre un certain fardeau de ces dépenses-là. Parce que les routes appartiennent 100% à la province. On parle de la rue Champlain, c'est 100% à la province. Mais on a accepté, comme à cause de la grosseur de notre municipalité, les cités ont accepté, par exemple, de payer 46% de ces dépenses-là. Mais même avec cette offre-là sur la table, on a encore beaucoup de nos chemins qui en souffrent. Avec le partenaire, puis peu importe, je ne parle pas de politique, là, peu importe quel gouvernement, au cours des années, laissent aller leurs actifs, puis qui en paye le prix. Moi, je me gêne pas pour rappeler à tout le monde à qui appartient la rue Champlain quand on se plaint de la rue Champlain. Puis, regarde, on a des plaintes de la rue Champlain. Ça fait longtemps que c'est sur notre liste. Ça fait longtemps qu'on demande.
Monsieur le maire, je vais faire une comparaison. C'est moins cher que ce qu'on fait sur le boulevard Dieppe. Comparativement à ce qu'on est en train de faire sur l'Acadie en Abitibi. Ça fait la différence de faire de la gestion d'actifs.
OK, monsieur Lambert.
Merci, monsieur le maire. Merci, Steve. C'est une belle présentation. Ça nous aide à mieux comprendre effectivement la gestion des actifs parce que c'est nouveau pour nous autres. Ma question, c'est par rapport à l'investissement requis versus l'investissement budgété. On a un déficit de 7,5 millions presque. Donc, à partir de là, on fait quoi? À quel point c'est critique? Puis est-ce qu'il serait fortement recommandé qu'on investisse au niveau du budget, qu'on budgète un investissement à la hausse pour réduire ce déficit budgétaire-là? Puis comment on se situe par rapport aux autres municipalités ou à la moyenne? En d'autres mots, on est dans la moyenne ou c'est à 7,5 millions de déficit? C'est quelque chose à regarder sérieusement qu'il faudrait investir davantage.
Pour répondre à la première partie de ta question, oui, l'idéal, ça serait de diminuer le plus possible cet écart-là. On est en mauvaise posture actuellement. Comme je disais, on est une municipalité assez jeune. Pour les prochains 10 ans, nos investissements, c'est quand même une moyenne des 50 à 100 prochaines années que vous montrez au tableau. Le prochain 10 ans, on est quand même assez bien financé. Oui, il y a des petits écarts ici et là dans certaines flottes. J'allais pour dire la flotte est quand même assez bien financée à 30 par elle-même. Ça serait plus les bâtiments. Je ne sais pas si vous avez eu la chance de lire dans la présentation, je parle du rapport de l'état des actifs. Ils sont tous détaillés un par un. On a des bâtiments, on devrait investir à peu près 4 millions par année. Actuellement, on investit à peu près 1. Mais nos bâtiments n'ont pas besoin de mettre 4 millions dans les prochaines décennies. Mais dans 20 ans d'asteur, il faudra peut-être mettre 10 millions. Si on ne met pas le 4 millions de plus en réserve, on va être mal pris à ce moment-là.
C'est la beauté d'avoir, moi je me plais à dire, c'est le fun à dire, tout est neuf, on a tous des belles bâtisses neuves, mais ça va tout venir à échéance en même temps. Il va y avoir des gros coûts à absorber en même temps.
Puis, pour vrai, pour un comparable avec les autres villes, on n'a pas fait de l'exercice, j'ai pas fait de l'exercice, je ne sais pas si Marc était peut-être plus au courant. Mais on voit quand même une municipalité comme Saint-Jean qui est plus vieille. Leur défi financier qu'ils ont. Peut-être le meilleur exemple, c'est Fredericton. Je pense qu'ils sont le modèle à suivre, point de vue gestion des actifs et ratio d'endettement. C'est sûr qu'ils ont des infrastructures gouvernementales qui viennent embellir leur ville, des argents qui viennent injectés au cours des années. Les petites municipalités, je vois des municipalités plus vieilles qui n'ont plus de terrain de baseball. Ou terrain de soccer, là, il n'y a plus.
Puis on fait les moyens.
Oui, on a en super bonne condition, les infrastructures sont en super bonne condition physique, mais il faut faire pour les générations.
Merci, puis félicitations, comme je dis, avoir tout ça détaillé, puis
To have all that
je pense
detail,
que
very well
confiance
detailed.
on fait une
Give
bonne
us
gestion
confidence that we're doing
bien.
good management of assets and yeah,
Merci.
thank you,
Merci, M. Brideau.
Monsieur Brideau.
Merci, M. le maire. Mais moi, aussi, parce que ce qui me fait peur, c'est quand on parle d'une bonne gestion, la tuerie souterraine, j'ai peur qu'il va manquer de brideau à quelque part.
I'm afraid that there will be some lack somewhere.
OK.
Faut-tu que je réponde à ça? Ou...
Non, c'est
No,
pense pas,
please.
Je pense pas que c'est nécessaire.
I don't think you have to.
Je vois pas d'autres
I
questions.
don't see any other
À moins que je me
questions
trompe.
unless
Pas
I'm
d'autres
wrong.
lumières qui s'allument.
No
Merci pour
lights
la
around.
présentation. Je
Thank you
pense
for
que
your presentation. I think
c'est une belle introduction
it's a
pour
good
les nouveaux membres du conseil
introduction
en
for the new
particulier.
members of council, especially
Des défis qui sont
of the
devant nous.
challenges.
C'est facile, comme ça a été mentionné un peu plus tôt
It's easy
dans la
and
présentation, suite à la présentation
earlier
du
following
pickleball.
the
C'est pas les
presentation
idées qui manquent
for
d'hier.
pickleball. It's not the ideas
Mais
that
pour
lack
chaque
it yet,
chose que l'on
but for
fait,
each
il
thing
faut
that we
considérer
do,
les
we
conséquences à
have to
long terme,
consider the
les
long-term
résultats à long terme.
consequences, the
Alors,
long-term
ceci
results.
étant dit, on va
This being
continuer
said,
à
continue
innover, on va
to
continuer
innovate,
à faire
continue
progresser notre communauté et à faire des
to
jaloux.
make our
Bonne fin
community
de soirée à
progress
tous.
and have jealous people. Good night, everybody.